Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Achieving Better Coordination Between Operations and IT. My name is Nilu Parvinashtiani and I'll help with facilitating today's webinar. This webinar is sponsored by the Federal Highway Administration and hosted by the National Operations Center of Excellence, or NOCO. Just a quick reminder, if you don't know us already, we support the transportation system management and operations community by providing resources. So on your screen right now, you see a box called Useful Links box. If you click through those links, you can get connected to TSMO resources and news. Also on the top corner of the screen, there is a download pod where you can download the presentations from today's webinar. This screen will be shown now during the intro and then later during Q&A for your access. A few other logistics for today's webinar. We are recording the webinar, and that recording along with the presentation will also be available on the on-demand learning section of the NOCO website. All the attendee phones are on listen-only mode, but please stay engaged by using the question discussion pod that we have on the screens for any comments or questions. As those comments and questions come to your mind, please just type them in there, and then we do have a dedicated time for Q&A where the moderator will read each question out loud and the presenters will answer each question as much as the time allows. So that's all I had, and with that, I'll hand it over to our moderators, Jim Hunt and Les Jacobson, to start us off. Jim, Les.
Great. Thanks so much, Nilo. This is Jim starting it off here. Hope everyone's doing well and staying healthy and safe. Seeing my picture up there in the corner in the office, I never thought I'd feel nostalgic about cubicles and fluorescent lighting, but miss it a little bit sometimes. But anyway, thanks to the Center of Excellence, Nilo, and the continued support with advancing some of our TSMO and operations in general activities. So this is the first of two webinars. If you saw the announcement for this, you probably saw the information about the second one, which will be held October 6th. So a lot of interest and a lot of interesting stories to tell about this relationship between information technology and transportation systems management and operations. So I'm from the Federal Highway Office of Operations, and we undertook this project to really shed light on the kind of the nexus between these two functions in transportation agencies. Les Jacobson is the WSP and is a subcontractor to Cambridge Systematics, and he's the principal investigator on this project for Federal Highway, and he'll be co-moderating this with me. So real quick, in terms of the agenda, we're just going to describe the purpose and motivation for the project. Then I'm going to hold panelist introductions for now, but I will mention that we have three agencies that we've interviewed that clearly are striving towards improved, and in many cases have had success in improving the coordination between IT and TSMO. So we have Brad Fries and Joe Kirk from the Tennessee Department of Transportation, Bob Taylor and Craig Shuey from the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, and Doug Tomlinson from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. And when we interviewed PennDOT, we had the IT representative, Scott Hoffman, on the line as well. So Doug's going to represent both hats there for PennDOT. So we're going to talk a little bit about the project summary, goals and objectives, and but we're going to go into more depth on that in the second webinar. But real quickly, the impetus for this largely came from a lot of the outreach that was done as part of the SHARP 2 Organizing for Reliability efforts and the capability maturity model self-assessments that were conducted throughout the country. And it became pretty evident that IT was playing a stronger role in decisions related to ITS and traffic management. Whereas in the past, it seemed like there was oftentimes separate systems, and the transportation folks would be able to procure software and hardware, integrate systems through their own processes. Increasingly, that was becoming more of a gray area. And in a lot of ways, I think the ITS and TSMO folks recognized that we really needed the expertise from IT as the data platforms grew, the amount of data grew, the fact that more and more ITS infrastructure was coming back on a shared network, software and hardware issues at the traffic management centers, networking equipment, communications, planning. So various roles that the TSMO folks saw we really could benefit from getting IT more on board with our program, and that's kind of the impetus for starting to look at this interface more closely. So we're going to just talk a little bit more about what the project is about. So as I said, we're trying to improve this coordination at the institutional level, bridge these gaps, and try and identify practices, or first of all, challenges that have been observed, and what are some effective practices that have been put in place by these three agencies, as well as the few we're going to hear from on the second webinar, to overcome those challenges. In terms of what we've been doing to collect information and provide products related to the project, so the idea was to develop effective practices, case studies, and fact sheets, and we're working on those right now. We've gotten a lot of the base material, the base information as inputs. There's not a lot written about this, so much of what we've gathered has come from formal and informal interviews, and we've convened and supported listening sessions that have brought both the TSMO folks and the IT folks together. That's been very informative. And we're delivering outreach. We presented on this topic at ITE, and a lot of interest from that community last week. And as I said, this will be one of two NOCO webinars, and then we'll also have another conference engagement down the road. And ultimately to provide blueprints or roadmaps. I think that was the original thinking, but as I said, we lacking a lot of hard and fast and one-size-fits-all guidance. It'll be more of a reference document and effective practices, and to just help folks get started improving some of their interactions with the other group. So with that, I will turn it over to my co-moderator, Les Jacobson, to go into a little more detail on the project, and then to introduce the panelists for today. Les?
Thanks, Jim. So as Jim mentioned, there's a few things that we are developing for this specific project. We've gotten information from a variety of sources, including the literature review and synthesis of practice. There was not an awful lot out there, at least at the time that we were doing this, on the kind of the challenges that operations people have, transportation operations people have with dealing with some of the IT issues. So a lot of what we did was gather information through the first listening session that we had, which was a little over a year ago, and then we've talked to a lot of people and interviewed them. In fact, all of the panelists today have been involved in either the listening session or through interviews or both of those. From that, we've developed a draft reference document, and we're trying to complete that now and finalize it. We've done several presentations to a lot of different committee meetings. We also had one at the ITE annual meeting. This is the first of two webinars, as Jim mentioned, that we'll be doing in addition to that. We also have some ability to provide some technical assistance to agencies that will help them work either through any of the operations IT issues or help them in coordination between the IT group and the operations group. And then we're also developing 5 different flyers on noteworthy practices that we've uncovered in this. So you'll be able to get some additional information and resources as we go on. I think Jim covered this really well. Why is there a project on trying to coordinate technology resources between operations and TSMO? And really there's a few things. There's this intersection, much bigger intersection between TSMO and IT, both because there's an expanded use of technology in transportation, and the technology in transportation and the technology in IT are kind of coming together. I think back when traffic management systems were first put in place, they looked a lot different in terms of what types of computers were used, the networks that were used. A lot of things were real different, and those two are coming together. There's a lot more real-time computing, not only in operations, but also in IT. And certainly the cybersecurity threats are very important now, and especially as transportation operations wants to share information, share control, and those sorts of things. The issues with having a network that people from the outside can access becomes more and more of an issue in terms of cybersecurity threats. We've seen some common experiences across all the agencies that we've talked about. A lot of times there's misunderstandings, and quite frankly, one side just doesn't understand what the other is trying to do, because they haven't often talked about that enough to see what the different perspectives are. Sometimes there's legitimate differences in priorities and how the two groups view risks. There's also a lot of opportunities, though. There's a lot with increased collaboration. We've seen just in the time of this project that there's a lot more collaboration between operations and IT in the transportation realm. A lot better understanding of how best to leverage skill sets from each of the two groups, especially I think from operations, to understand better how they can leverage the skill sets and the opportunities that IT bring to bear. And that includes some of the advantages in procurement. Some agencies are able to choose between an IT procurement or their own transportation procurement and kind of choose the best procurement approach for what they're trying to do. The other thing that probably is not too surprising if you think about it, these challenges really are not unique to transportation. I did some just easy web searches on conflict between information technology and operations or operational technology, and found a bunch of things like this. This was a quote from the Internet of Business website. It says, conflict between IT and operations are damaging Internet of Things projects. And there's a lot that's been discussed about how operational technology, OT, and IT fit together. So just a little bit about each. In operational technology, as we do in ITS or TSMO, the hardware and software is really about detecting or managing or causing a change some way. It involves a lot more direct monitoring. It also controls physical devices, processes, events, and things like that. And this cuts across a really broad range of industrial control systems. As mentioned on the previous slide, the Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things, IIoT, that's a term I hadn't heard of before looking into this. Also, of course, in manufacturing, where there's a lot of industrial control systems, in energy distribution, in water and wastewater control, all of those things have these operational technology features that are really pretty similar to what we look for in transportation. And when we look into this more, there's this whole topic called IT-OT convergence, which is really how to better coordinate and integrate IT, information technology, and OT, operational technology. Some of the challenges are things like what's the governance about networks and equipment on the network, all of those sorts of things. Also, what is the role between these two groups? A lot of times IT has more of an oversight role, especially to make sure that the security of the networks are intact, but also from a cost perspective to make sure that different OT groups within an organization are working to kind of leverage the most cost-effective approaches. Some of the statements that I read that I really had to kind of say, boy, that sounds like a lot of the things that perhaps I used to hear. OT and IT could not be more diametrically opposed. And then also some of the frustration with some of the operational technology folks that IT has little experience with industrial systems. So again, you could take out industrial systems and put in traffic management systems, and a lot of that would be heard as well. So industry overall has been grappling with this, and so it's not unique to transportation at all. We are developing a reference document. Some of the things that will be included in this is to make sure there's a good explanation of why this coordination between IT and operations is important, what some of the pitfalls are if there's poor coordination, and to point out also that there's this increasing need for coordination because of the way we all use technology and what some of the threats are by using technology in the way that we do. We also talk about understanding the other disciplines so that the operations people understand the IT people and vice versa. We're also probably the crux of this document, really, the most important part, is to look at how IT-related operational challenges can be overcome. So we've identified a number of challenges and then identified ways that practitioners have effectively addressed those challenges. So probably the center point of this document will be a tool that helps people look for their challenge and then find some potential ways that they can address those challenges and get past those challenges. And then we also have a little bit on preparing for future challenges. We may not know all the challenges that are going to come to confront us, but there are certain things that we feel are good ways to try and address any of those future challenges that might come up. So a little bit more on challenges. I'm not going to get into these in detail. The second webinar will get into a little bit more depth on these, at least examples of these. But we came up with 8 different categories for challenges. Some of them were more on the institutional side, and some were more on the process and technology side. So on the institutional side, there's things like cultural differences between operations and IT, some staff and financial resources that might be important. Who gets staff? How is money allocated? Sometimes there can be some organizational issues, especially in state DOTs that used to have an IT group within the Department of Transportation. A lot of states have pulled all of those resources into a central organization, and that provides a little bit more distance, but there's been some very good ways that agencies have dealt with that organizational challenge as well as others. And then finally, some policy issues. More on the process and technology side, certainly thinking about strategic planning. And as we plan for TSMO or ITS systems to look at incorporating IT staff, also what concepts need to be included in there to make sure that we can coordinate with IT as best we can. I mentioned procurement before, and just making sure there's coordination on procurement issues. The full realm of systems and technologies, and especially where IT may have a lot more depth of knowledge about certain systems and technologies and being able to leverage that. And finally, around risk and security. We've all heard about the cybersecurity issues, and I don't think I need to belabor that, but that's a really important challenge and some effective practices that we've found on that. So we've also categorized our effective practices. When we first went into this, we thought there would be kind of this unique set of effective practices that would cover, for example, maybe the organizational issues or the cultural issues or challenges or procurement. And what we found was that there's most of the effective practices can be used to address multiple challenges in multiple challenge categories. And so we categorized effective practices a little bit differently than we thought of initially as well. So we came up with categories of collaboration, of staffing, of planning and programming, of program delivery, and then equipment and systems. So in the document, we kind of identify each category, and then there are separate effective practices for each. I mentioned earlier that we also have a section on kind of coming to a common understanding of IT for TSMO people and of TSMO for IT people. And we also found that there were some kind of common categories that you could think of for each, things like governing principles, risk management and security, asset management, domain components, industry standards, and future technologies. So in each of these fields, there are governing principles, and it's really important for one side to understand the other. There's issues with risk management and security on both sides, and it's really important to understand each other's views of risk management and security. And you could go through each one of these and the importance of understanding the other side's view of some of these categories of issues that might come up. So with that, I think we can cut over to our first pair of panelists, and I'd like to introduce Brad Fries and Joe Kirk from Tennessee DOT. Both Brad and Joe were at our listening session a little over a year ago, as I mentioned. We really were I think we had a great advantage in having these two people there because they clearly get along well, and they're really interested in making this relationship work well, and they've been involved in this project ever since that time. So I think Brad's going to take it on first.
Yeah, that's right, Les. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Les. So my name is Brad Fries. I work with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, where I'm the director of the Traffic Operations Division, which, also, what we consider TSMO in Tennessee. So when I first heard about this project, I believe I was at TRB a couple of years back and heard Les give a presentation. And I thought, wow, I mean, Les, this research project that Jim was leading and Les was presenting on was really speaking to me and speaking to what was going on in Tennessee with our relationship with IT and TSMO. And I actually sent a text message to Joe Kurt, who was actually also at TRB that year, and said, Joe, we need to be involved in this. We need to be involved in this project. We could probably leverage a lot of the product out of this to help support what we're doing in Tennessee. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we've come from at TDOT and the history. And you see my title here, Below the Lines. So Below the Lines is really an expression that we use to talk about, just getting beyond the layers, getting back to where, what it's all about and where our biases are and how we can work together and understand each other. So I'm going to come at this from a pretty high level. So I like to use, you see this next slide, The Odd Couple. I like to use a pop culture 70s reference here, analogy of The Odd Couple, where you see Rick and Oscar, you see Felix and Oscar. Felix is on the left and Oscar's on the right. Felix was the more the button-up, the more analytical photographer, very structured, and then Oscar was kind of the freewheeling. He was the sports writer, very sloppy, and it kind of relates to us in IT as far as with traffic ops and IT. Is sometimes we speak a different language. Sometimes we have to see beyond our bias and really understand each other. And we're living in the same place, like we're living in the same space, like The Odd Couple. They were sharing an apartment and they were in each other's world. So we can really work together and learn how to leverage our strengths from the other. And then really a little bit of history at TDOT going back. We started proper in using technologies to support traffic operations in TSMO back in the 90s, the mid-90s, early 90s. We deployed our first ITS project, fog zone system in an area between McMinn and Bradley counties, north of Chattanooga, where we had a high history of fog incidents. So that really kicked off our involvement in using that technology to support our operations. So from then, we built our 4 TMCs, our traffic management centers, and deployed what we call our TDOT Smart Waste system to have, the capability of monitoring our system and pushing the traveler information out, but also trying to become more proactive in how we manage our operations as well, how we support the efficiency of the transportation system. So, I guess true to that analogy, The Odd Couple, a lot in the ITS, in the traffic ops and TSMO background are not from the IT, don't have the same background as what you consider traditional IT background, coming from more an engineering background. As far as a civil engineering background, I'm a civil engineer, so I have that perspective coming in. So really, when we built our ITS system, we relied a lot on consultant services. We used a number of different consultants, and there's nothing wrong with that, but really starting off, we didn't have a lot of internal knowledge in-house, at least from the engineering bureau, the engineering side of the house side, on how we use this technology. And to be honest, we had limited involvement from our IT side, our IT division within TDOT. And then that started to change back in 2013 when we formed the Traffic Operations Division. That same time, we had a new IT director step in, Joe Kurt, and we really started to sit down and talk about this and how we could work together. We have our challenges, but seeing how we can work together and seeing how we can include them more in the process. From that point, we've gone through several challenges. We're deploying a statewide software system, working back and forth with IT and traffic ops to make that successful, dealing with a lot of cybersecurity issues as far as building up our security capabilities on our network. As I said earlier, our system was built, our ITS system in the field was built through several years, kind of growing and evolving through different consultant services contracts on the design side, but also different contractors. Not a lot of consistency in bringing those pieces together. So when we started the division and Joe Kurt, we started really working together to make sure we bring in that consistency and think bigger picture on how that system needs to mature and grow over time. So during that same time, Les mentioned consolidation of IT services. We have gone through a period where that in Tennessee, other state agencies' IT divisions have been consolidated, and Joe will probably talk a little bit more about that. But we're still maturing our relationship and still maturing in the way we do things. So moving ahead here, we are currently working on developing a workshop. We actually have been working on this for quite some time, almost a year and a half now, developing a workshop to really get together with IT and traffic ops staff and further develop our working relationship. These are the workshop goals, further develop our working relationship, establish clear understandings of roles, responsibilities, and missions of IT and traffic ops with regards to how we leverage existing and future technology, developing a framework that documents the roles and responsibilities of traffic ops and IT and establishes those key work processes and communication networks needed to support that further development, successful development of operations and maintenance of our system, and to conduct a visiting session to align priorities for the next 5 to 10 years. So we've been working through this, and COVID has slowed us down a little bit. We were actually planning on having an in-person workshop where we had what I like to call family time, when we have some team building time in addition to the actual workshop format. But we're working through that now, planning this, and part of the ways we're doing that, we work, actually Joe and I and Joe's assistant director Jermaine and my assistant director Lee we actually meet once a week and really talk about how we're working together and try to uncover any other improvements that we can make as far as how we integrate and work together. So this next slide is what we call the traffic ops IT onion, the 5 layers of this onion here, really starting in the slide got a little messed up here in the transition, but you can see that in the center, that's the strategic level. And these are all the 5 levels where we need to work on, make sure we have a formalized integration of IT into traffic ops and TSMO. So everywhere from the strategic level to the project planning level, project design level, to project development when we're deploying the projects, and then the operation and maintenance side. But in addition to that, we have these cross-cutting issues. We have the R&D and the testing, and then we also have the procurement that Les talked about. What direction are we going to take with how we procure services, whether we use procurement from this more custom, we're more accustomed to on the engineering side, through the, either on-call services, through engineering services, or whether we use more of traditional IT procurement. So really working through that and developing formal lines between how that fits together. I mean, something that's been really good has been Joe and I's relationship. It's been one of the highlights of my career, really, to get to work with Joe and learn and grow together. But beyond that, one of the big things we want to walk away with from our workshop and this time we spend together is coming up with a more formalized structure of how we work together, and that's really what I'm trying to get out of this, and something that lives beyond Joe and Brad and goes to the next level in formalizing this. Not to say that it's not formal now. I mean, we do have committees that we use, but at times some of our partnerships are more ad hoc. So I guess that's from the engineering bureau's perspective, and I want to turn it over to Joe to provide his background and his perspective too.
Great, thanks, Brad, and thank you for introducing me as the sloppy one. I believe it was.
You're not the sloppy one, Joe.
No, actually, I probably I was sitting here laughing. One of the problems with these things is you say something funny and you don't have any idea if anybody laughed at it or not. But I was laughing at that point because that's actually pretty true. Brad is an engineer. He's much more structured. I'm not. My dad was. My dad was part of the space program. He was a civil engineer. But you know, I'm more from an IT, very agile methodologies and constantly looking for change. So we've had this culture clash. And I want to go back. Les mentioned up front, by the way, I like the Walter Matthau version of the Odd Couple better. But Les mentioned something about culture, and I really think it is worth noting that at this moment in history, starting a few years ago and going for a few more years to come, there's a massive shift that's going on in the DOT. That in broad strokes, you can go all the way back to Eisenhower coming back from the war and saying, hey, let's build an interstate. And there's a generation of people that, as our chief engineer says, we're asphalt black and don't look back. We were building roads. We were doing a great job of it. And it's been an important phase in American history. But the future is not about more asphalt. The future for transportation is way more about technology. So much change happening that we could have a much longer discussion of all the things that will be different 20 years from now, as opposed to go back 20 years, and it's kind of the same as it was then. And within a DOT, the group that I see as leading that change is whoever is dealing with ITS, TSMO, operation technology, the traffic ops people, that's the group that is saying we're not just building more roads, we're looking for new ways to get more people to the places they want to go, and it's more about silicon than it is about asphalt. So there's really, you end up with two groups that are very focused on technology, which is IT and here traffic ops. So I think it's inevitable then that when that much culture change is happening and you've got two groups that are out on the leading edge of that culture change, it's going to be a struggle. And Brad's being very nice, and it actually has been a very good relationship. I think that we have one of the best relationships of any DOT, and we've made a lot of strides here, but we've also gone through a lot of struggles getting there. Both between us and between our people. And a lot has to do with figuring out how it is that we actually work together and benefit from the things that we're both good at. And it's not quite a perfect analogy, but I think if you go back in history and think of ITS as a car, then traffic ops was driving the car and IT wasn't even in the car. And somewhere along the way, IT gets involved and gets invited to come sit in the back seat. And then as Brad and I started working together, we got invited to sit up in the front seat, but we're still sort of the passenger side. And I think the future is going to carry my imperfect analogy. The future is going to look more like piloting a 747, that there are two people sitting together with a whole lot of controls in front of them. And depending on what you're looking at any given moment, either one of those could be the person who's in charge, where it's a little more of a partnership and not just an assistance that's going on. But we don't know how to do that yet. And for me, the challenge is that within a DOT, that for our culture, that I am the leader of the minority culture. We're an engineering bureau. Everybody who's an engineer and is carrying a phone in their pocket thinks that they know how to run a computer system, and they did some programming back in college. So there's a lot of creative people who don't necessarily have the discipline of IT, but they've got ideas. And so our challenge in IT is to figure out how do we work with those ideas and make them actually enterprise, manageable, supportable, without stifling the creativity of a bunch of engineers who really want to do something technical and have great ideas. So I think the challenge for us would be that that we're building an Internet of Things together. And actually, if you pay attention to the IoT world, it's one of the more interesting IoTs because eventually we're moving to a stage where there are cars going down the road with no drivers in them that are communicating with an infrastructure that Brad and I are building together. And it is being built in pieces all around the world without a lot of central coordination. That's an incredibly exciting challenge, and it does require a new set of skills on both of our parts. So let me just say the things quickly that I think we do to try to help with this world. The first would be in Tennessee, and I think this is true in most states, the ITS TSMO network was built not just independently state to state, but independently by regions within the state. We have 4 regions in Tennessee and 4 TMCs, and basically they all kind of did their own thing. Brad and I came into our jobs within a month of each other, and before that there was nobody at headquarters who was trying to coordinate what they were doing. Some things were the same, but a lot of things were different. Even where they were running the same software, they were running different versions of the software, and they couldn't back up one another. They couldn't communicate with one another well. And so a lot of our challenge has been to bring them together in the software and in the network to build a network that is redundant, secure, where they can back up one another. The second thing would be security, security, security. For all the creativity that was happening in the TMCs prior to even Brad and I being in these roles, the work wasn't being done by people who had a background in computer networking and certainly not in computer security. And I still believe that in any state in America, one of the most insecure places on the state network is alongside the interstate. That's not true today in Tennessee. We're very proud of the security and the backup, and everything's built in. We're not going into that detail today. But it's taken us a while together to build that and to hold back on doing some things until we had a network that could actually support it. Third thing would be that I think that engineers, particularly people working in a DOT space, will tend to work, they'll think about the network from the endpoint back toward the center, so that you see something that's cool. Here's this new device, this BSRC widget that we can put out on the side of the road. We got to go get us about 10,000 of those and spread them around the state. And now what do we need back at the core to be able to support it? Well, let's go get that thing. and you end up with all these incompatible systems because you're working from the outside in. And I think one thing that we've brought to the discussion is to say, let's build an enterprise platform at the center and then build out to the endpoints with things that are compatible with that so that they can all be managed. And there's certainly a number of technical decisions we've made about it. As Brad mentioned, we struggle every day with how we buy technology. Our model is not the same as the way Brad gets his stuff. He tends to, a lot of things happen on the back of a construction project or a maintenance project. While we're building this road, let's put in some fiber and put up some poles, and then we can hang things on it. And then somewhere toward the end of that discussion, IT comes in and says, hey, now we got to put network gear in. And oftentimes we were not in the initial discussion. Again, nobody's fault, just a cultural issue that we're in the administrative bureau. We tend to not be in the room necessarily when those talks are happening. And then I think the last thing I would say, Brad mentioned centralization, and I cannot say strong enough that every DOT needs to fight in any way you can to hold on to your IT. If you lost your IT to a centralized effort, which is absolutely the trend around the country, fight to get them back. And I would argue, don't just fight to get them back in order to have one in the ITS TSMO side, but fight to have one in the DOT. The future of transportation needs technical people at the table when strategy discussions are happening, and that won't happen when you give all that away to someone who is trying to figure out how to give you the cheapest product they can so that they can save money across the state. We have successfully fought that off in Tennessee and found a way that we could be considered consolidated, but yet I and everybody in my group has remained with TDOT. I actually wear two hats. I'm the CIO at TDOT, and then I run a transportation domain at our central IT group. And so I have the ability to work with the rest of the state, but I'm also independent. I have independent funding, independent staff, and I think that's going to be very important coming down the road. And I would caution not to just end up with an IT group that's focused on the network on the interstate, but to have one that also deals with your office environment, because much of our job is to try to bridge those two. The day is coming, I'll close with this, the day is, it's happening as we speak, that devices on the side of the road will be making decisions about making changes in real time to the road, changing the speed limit on a sign because it started raining or whatever it is. And you will need a robust operational technology network, but that data will also need to come back to a central location where people in groups like Brad's will be analyzing that data and looking for patterns to help design the systems that we will put in the future. And so those two worlds need to come together, and the pipes between them and the amount of data between them will be enormous. So very, very important, I think, as hard as it is to merge these two cultures, I think it's one of the key things that every DOT needs to be working on. That's me.
Thanks, Joe. You know, one of the things that you had mentioned to me, I think, or maybe mentioned in the listening session, was the number of attempted intrusions to your network, and it was pretty startling to me. You want to just share that with everyone?
Yeah, this is from the state side, but it's about 18,000 a day. I think the thing to recognize in that, I mean, all the 18,000, it's clearly programmatic. It's not people sitting there typing things in. But the thing to recognize on a cybersecurity problem is that a hacker only has to be right once, whereas we have to be right every time. In those 18,000, if they only hit once, if they hit once a month, if they hit once a year, they're in your network. And so it's been very important to us. We're separating our networks, and even if someone manages to get on the network on the interstate and all of our defenses fail, they can't get from there back to the state network. And I know in many cases that's not true around the country.
Thanks, Joe. With that, let's go ahead and move on to the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I have one question that was here first, so as we're getting set up for Craig and Bob, there's a question. This is from John Sullivan. Thanks, Brad and Joe, for all you do. I am proud to be a part of the operations team and all of this, and we are fortunate to have such forward thinking. We would not be able to do what we do daily without you. I fully agree with you, Joe. IT needs to be in-house for state DOTs for a solid future. Thanks, John. I'm not sure, is Bob starting this or is Craig? Whoever, go ahead and kick it off.
Craig's going to start, and I want to thank Joe, Brad, and Les for kind of setting up where we're gonna run into this. Culture is kind of at the key to how the Pennsylvania Turnpike's been successful with managing its collaboration between IT and traffic operations. And Bob's pulled up here our kind of layout of what we're going to try to work through. I want to touch kind of at the beginning here on culture and start a little bit with our strategic plan, because honestly, everything for us kind of fits into this and then drives all the other things that we do. And I really just want to draw your attention to our logo at the top, safety-focused, customer driven, and all the things that we do kind of fall into a very simple mantra, which is nobody expects to stop on an interstate highway. And so to the extent at which we can keep things moving at the normal flow of traffic, everybody's safer, from the passenger in a car to the truck driver to our employees to our state troopers to our contractors. So we kind of keep this traffic flow model at the heart of all of the things that we do, and whether that's the application of traffic information, whether it's changes to our traffic operations center and how it functions and collaborates, or to how our maintenance personnel attack a problem on the roadway. It's all designed to try to restore traffic or maintain traffic at a very high level. And this strategic plan that we've developed really kind of pulls in from every employee at the commission. And we did a survey of all of our employees, and safety and the customer experience were really at the very heart of everything that we got in terms of responses. So from an organization, whether it's the commissioners directing us, our CEO, Bob and myself, and everybody who works at the commission, we really kind of have this commitment driven to trying to make sure that those things that we do are all affecting safety and all positively affecting the customer. If you want to go to the next slide, Bob. This is our CEO, and he kind of likes this quote: bad companies are destroyed by crisis, good companies survive them, great companies are improved by them. And we at the commission have endured a good number of tragedies or setbacks, or however you want to call, how you want to define a crisis. And sadly, everything from losing employees to a variety of different incidents or accidents to roadway closures of a significant nature. We earlier this year dealt with a multi-fatality bus crash, and we've, I think, as an organization, used a lot of those as opportunities to figure out how to do better. And our coordination with IT and traffic operations kind of fits nicely into a lot of this, because we've always been able to take away an opportunity to use new tools and develop new tools and find ways to make us better at what we do. So there's other pieces to surviving and thriving in a crisis environment, but there are a lot of things that we've been able to refocus ourselves and utilize those things as ways to get to better coordination and collaboration. And I'm gonna pass off now to Bob Taylor. But one of the real advantages to our particular situation between traffic operations and IT is that Bob was a practitioner and hired into to our traffic operations unit and ascended to the chief technology officer from that position. So it was sort of like we took one of our stars out of the traffic operations center and our traffic operations unit and gave him to IT. And so the transition was really wonderful in terms of making a lot of the next things happen. I will say that for Bob, he had to go from he had to buy a lot of shirts with sleeves. Let's put it that way when he moved into the space that he's in now, because the Oscar Madisons are our traffic operations folks, and now he's Felix Unger in the suit and tie. And so I'll let him run with that very flat joke, because as Joe mentioned, you really can't tell whether they're working or not.
Thanks, Craig. It might have been voted off the island, but I'll take the compliment. So, and again, I think Craig touched on this, but really that customer obsession, it drives what we do. One thing as we sort of refocused our IT department, you've heard the conversations about IT saying no or being somewhat of an obstructionist. I think our mindset for the past few years has really been customer experience and focusing on our internal customers. Really project delivery, getting things done, and really collaboration with other departments. So that's been our focus. We try to say not to say no. We try to say, how can we help? One thing we try to do is focus on need over technology. It's easy to chase the shiny object, but we really want to focus on capabilities and needs. Empowering people to innovate. I think we have a lot of great people in both departments. Sort of applying that Google principle of giving people 10% of their time just to innovate. I think we've had great success there. And part of that is accepting some failure, trying to manage that risk of failure, but accepting some. And I think I put an email from Craig from January. I know it's hard to read, but really celebrating some success. We've done a lot of good things over the past few years. I think it's nice to acknowledge those, and we try to do that as a group. I'll cover this quickly, but teamwork really has to be purposeful. We have a lot of mechanisms, a lot of touch points. Craig and I get together every 2 weeks to talk about projects. We have our innovation council, and it's really that think tank, that collaborative environment for really rapid innovation. TEO, traffic operations, IT is part of that. Most of the focus in that group is really customer safety and mobility. We also have our IT advisory board. TEO participates in that. Sometimes, as an IT organization, it's striking that balance of focusing on the customer, focusing on safety, but also doing the things that we need to do from a foundational standpoint, whether that's security, like Joe talked about, or whether that's improving our business systems themselves. We need to strike that balance and strike that investment. So we really use the IT advisory board to do that. The last one on the screen is really our business relationship management. I spent 20 years in consulting, and we're really trying to apply those same principles here. We meet with every department, TEO, maintenance, electronic tool collection, every quarter, just to talk about their projects, make sure they have good transparency into their projects, talk about needs, talk about upcoming issues, and really provide that collaboration and communication. At the more tactical level, we have our ITS and connected vehicle working groups. That's comprised of traffic operations, also IT, maintenance, and several other departments are part of that. Really sort of looking at the standards, the design, the deployment, the operations of ITS and connected vehicle. We found that by merging IT and traffic ops into this conversation, we have folks in traffic operations who understand the need. We have people in IT who quickly have picked up connected vehicle technologies and really looked at how we can implement them. So it's really been a good partnership with respect to connected vehicles. We have a geoanalytics rapid response team. So when Craig and his staff are in the war room addressing an issue, they quickly respond to see how they can help and really analyze data and provide the tools they need. We have the transportation technologies group. They're embedded within the traffic operations center. Really, they work hand in hand. They report to IT, but they also attend traffic ops staff meetings. They oversee the operations and maintenance of all the TOC systems, ITS, and connected vehicle technologies. Then lastly, from a project management standpoint, it's not uncommon for us to assign dual project managers. Often we'll assign a business lead from traffic ops, and we'll assign a technical lead from IT. Really, that helps us sort of resolve both business needs and technical needs on a project, and that really usually works pretty well. So real quick on planning, Craig touched on our strategic plan. It's really our core values, our goals, and objectives. We also have our long-range plan. Really, that defines the future state. That's sort of assess the investment in different things. I think Joe touched on it. We were always a roadway company. We're becoming a mobility provider. We're becoming a technology company. So we're striking that balance at the executive level on what's the right investment in technology and traffic operations and the roadway itself. I won't go over too much of this. This is sort of how the sausage is made, if you will. Sort of some of those groups I touched on already. It's really how we identify needs and how we elevate them and make them become projects. Really, in the middle there is sort of how we deliver the projects themselves. And then on the back end is really focusing on doing it in a quality way, making sure we're addressing security and risk, and making sure that we're not impacting other systems as well. When I got this opportunity a few years ago, Craig and Mark Compton, our CEO, said, how much should we be spending on technology? So so we kind of took a look at where we're at as an organization, some of our priorities, our initiatives, where the industry is going, and we try to assess the right investment in technology, trying to decide, do we want to be a leader, middle of the pack, or do we want to be a follower? So I think we want to be a leader. So that helped us identify how much we should invest in technology. Again, our focus is sort of on mandated things, and requirements, strategic values and goals and objectives, and other solutions that deliver effectiveness and deliver value. So I know Jim Hunt will like this chart. In 2014, we actually had Federal Highways facilitate a workshop with us on sort of capabilities maturity. And at that time, we were just refocusing our traffic operations group. I think the average score was about 1.5. It's nice to see that in the past few years, we've pushed the needle forward. I think we're about a 3.5 average overall. I know that's somewhat subjective, but to Craig's point, from a cultural standpoint, from a business process, from a technology standpoint, workforce and collaboration, we've really moved things forward. That's been a helpful tool to sort of baseline where we were a few years ago and identify where we need to go in the future. There's a few project management things, and I'll wrap it up here. We really focus on the capability and the need, not the technology. So that's hence the press release model. Really making sure that we have good project management plans. We try to take the system engineering approach, but to Joe's point, we also try to strike that balance of taking a more agile approach on some projects. One thing that we, from the top down, we reinforce that we don't want to lump new technology on top of bad process. So we always do a business process review as part of every project. And again, we make sure we have the right reporting on projects and the right governance as well. I think I'm going to have Craig kind of touch on some of the highlights of some of the things we've accomplished over the past couple of years.
Thanks, Bob. So yeah, just to carry this forward, it is, as I said, it's a driving from throughout the organization that makes a lot of these things successful, and a unified goal of making sure that we're improving safety and creating opportunities to improve our customers' experience. We've made some significant improvements to our traffic operations center by consistently and constantly improving it. Currently, the ATMS system is being online and enhanced significantly with a lot of functionality that wasn't there before. That's giving our radio technicians and the duty officers who run that system a greater ability to be flexible and responsive to what's happening. We're getting video analytics data that's going to help us with, in particular, wrong way driving, but also sort of drawing our attention to things that are out of the norm. We made some enhancements to the video wall because primarily we have video insights along our interchanges and not along wide swaths of the roadway. We made some changes so that situational awareness can be seen about traffic flow and potential incidents and other things across the system at a glance for the folks who are operating in our traffic ops center. We've literally a week prior to COVID becoming our new reality, we opened an alternate traffic operations center nearby to Harrisburg that we were actually able to spread out our operations and truly came through as a big win for us on a timing scale because we could keep people separated and give ourselves some resiliency in case COVID actually started to take out some of our work or our employees. Sorry. Obviously, a lot of the slides kind of details what we're doing in ITS, expanding our truck parking communication tools to try to help work on that problem. Mobile cameras that we've put in a lot of our vehicles so we can gain situational awareness. I'm going to talk a little bit later about another situational awareness program or our application we're working on, but that is one of our key elements to what we see as being successful is helping more people understand what's happening faster so that we can become more responsive. As we all know, minutes really matter in terms of being able to improve traffic flow, and so we really want to try to get as much in the hands of as many people as need to see it as quickly as possible. We're tinkering around the edges of connected and autonomous vehicles through our connected corridor and our connected vehicle lab. Hopefully we can continue to advance on that, and hopefully that as a system continues to advance in spite of some of the challenges that recent history has created for us. We're doing a lot of things with a variety of tools to get our customers more information. 511 Connect is a sort of it's like a tornado alert for a long-term closure on the roadway. This one coming out of one of our crises situations, giving us the ability to communicate with people who are stuck in events that are lasting longer than 4 hours to try to make sure that we don't overlook any unmet needs that they may have. Another thing I'm pretty excited about is the Haas Alert program and its partnership with Waze, because it gives us the ability to alert drivers to a stopped turnpike vehicle. So when we have a roadway assistance vehicle that's stopped and his lights are deployed, sends an automatic alert out, again trying to get awareness to people of what's happening on the roadway to try to make sure that they understand that traffic has stopped on their interstate and that they may need to slow down. And we've seen some reductions already in the limited amount of time that we've had it that really is helpful to the safety of those safety service patrol drivers, but as well as the motoring public. We're seeing a lot of these changes or these improvements pay off, and some of the things that we can start to measure is that our incident timeline is coming down, and we've made Bob, correct me if I missed this one, but I think it's about a 45-minute reduction in the average time it takes to clear some of our major incidents. And that's done. A lot of that is because we've really been able to apply that situational awareness. We've applied some techniques in the field beyond the technology that are helping to move cars out of the way faster, getting lanes cleared, paying additional attention to detail, and making sure that those that mission is kind of met. We've provided some new information and insights on weather and other changing elements to our maintenance facility, so they can see what's happening. And I want to spend just a little bit of time on this STAR app. And Bob, if you can, I think click ahead to that one, and then we can maybe go back to the others. I'll just stop with this one. This is an application that pulls directly from our ENS system and through our ATMS, giving as an incident pops up, as something is being recorded as happening, you can see it in real time. You can see the updates very effectively. You can choose as a Turnpike employee, you can choose which sections you're looking at, what severity of incidents you're looking at, and so for the maintenance foreman, they can see what's happening, anything that's happening in their section, and be able to hopefully respond quicker to those incidents at a more moment's notice than they normally would be. Also allows us to add photographs and updates. You can pull up the live traffic map to see how much of an impact that particular incident is having. And it really, it does two things. Again, it gives you that very instant responsiveness to what's happening on the roadway, but it also frees up a lot of time of that cross communication between, hey, I saw this was going on, and you've got 10 different phone calls to answer along the way. And so we feel very, very clearly that this is one of those items that's helping our folks stay on task and clear incidents much quicker than they had before. And I'm going to go back to Bob because there's some early warning detection stuff that I think he really needs to draw some highlight to. So Bob, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, and I'll do this quick because I know we're running behind. So I want to point out this tool, the early warning detection, because this is a good example of somebody from IT and somebody from traffic ops experimenting. They looked at AccuWeather data, Waze reports, speed profiles, threw it in a bowl, if you will, mixed it up, and really came up with some different options. But this tool really provides us sort of watch points across all those sort of data feeds that really, from a winter operation standpoint, it really is a good tool to help us assess when should we drop the speed limit. If we're seeing weather, Waze, speed profile changing, this gives us good indication we should maybe look at a speed limit reduction. So the other tool real quick is the ribbon wall. That this gives us sort of a window in the traffic ops center. It also has an active incident window. With the video analytics, it will also show the closest camera. So that's another neat tool that we've developed. I'll skip over this one. This is sort of the executive dashboard for mobility. And the last one I really wanted to show is the traffic incident timeline. You know, one thing being a true dispatch and traffic management center. We are dispatching emergency services. We have every incident. We track from when they were notified via Waze or a phone call. We look at activation, first arrival, assessment time, roadway clearance, and when traffic returns to normal. What's great about this tool, we can sort of slice and dice. We can look at all incidents. We can look at incidents by type, geography, responder. So we use this for after action reviews. And we really use it to assess the overall health of our traffic ops program, specifically our incident management program. So when Craig mentions the 45-minute reduction, this is the tool we use to measure that. I also do think it's interesting that we're seeing, on average, Waze incidents are reported 3 minutes before we get a phone call. So it's kind of neat to see the benefit of being a Waze partner in this timeline. So I think that's kind of what we want to talk about. I know, I think this is the last slide. Is just, the proof is in the pudding. You know, I think, you know, our ability to sort of marry technology with traffic operations yields mobility and safety benefits. I don't know, Craig, if you want to have any closing thoughts on this.
Just that you can really make or break your program by not gathering enough information to be able to explain why this project or that project should be a priority. And by being able to measure what we've done, we've been able to be more competitive for project funds along the way. And with that, I'm out.
Thank you both. We'll go ahead and move on. Our last presenter is Doug Tomlinson. He is the Chief of Highway Safety and Traffic Operations in the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Doug, you want to bring us on home?
All right, so sorry folks, I couldn't get the web to work, so I'm looking through a presentation on my screen and folks will switch it on their screen. So I want to approach this from a little different perspective, just talking about the relationship that IT and ITS had to form over the years at PennDOT. So on the second slide, the Transportation Systems Operations Plan, this was our first real effort, first real statewide effort in PennDOT to come up with a statewide program for traffic operations, or ITS. And we developed the Transportation Systems Operations Plan, and then using the boundaries we had for ITS architectures, developed 9 regional architectures. And this was largely done from the ITS community. IT wasn't really involved, and it ends up leading to where we try to do things our way and go down paths where our individual traffic management centers ultimately became islands, doing things their own way, doing contracts where one contract after another, the vendor would come in and make changes to what the last vendor had, and you end up with a big spiderweb mess around the state of stuff that doesn't really talk well together. That's what happens when ITS goes at everything alone in a vacuum. On the next slide, you'll see our road condition reporting system. Today, our CRS is our statewide application for all things that we do incident management related. It's the tool our traffic management centers use. But at the time when we wanted to develop this, there were 2 parts of IT. There was a part that focused largely on GIS applications like this, and there was a portion that focused on the network and security and computers and things of that nature. Well, the non-GIS people were kind of a pain in the butt. And even though the secretary wanted us to develop this, we developed it without telling IT so we could get it to the point where IT really couldn't do anything about it and stop it. So we built this with the GIS folks that were technically not IT at the time, just so we could get to a point where this would be our tool and they'd have no choice but to basically take it over and operate it for us. And as you can imagine, that's not a spectacular way to do business, not a good way to build relationships, not a good way to get your software high on the list of things for making upgrades and improvements. It's just a method to failure, but at the time, we didn't really seem to have a good choice because our 2 communities didn't get along well. The ITS folks thought they could do everything, and at the time, the IT folks liked to say no rather than trying to figure out how to help the business side. So the next slide, we talk about the ITS strategic plan. This was the first time we started trying to engage IT in the discussion. But as compared to where things have transitioned with TSMO, where you have a number of different aspects that we're trying to tackle, this was in the day where we were largely focused on what TSMO would refer to as systems and technology. Put out stuff, the stuff's going to solve the problem, and we're magically going to be wonderful just because we put stuff out in the field. And you folks know that that doesn't really work. It doesn't lead to success. It leads to stuff that's out there that we don't really have the capability of properly managing. We can't communicate well across the state. We don't have the support from leadership for the folks we need to have, and so on and so on and so on. So we tried to engage IT, and by engaging IT meant invite one IT person to sit in on the meetings when we did it, and we pretended that was engaging IT. But once it was done, and this was a giant list of systems and technology deployments that we wanted to do, IT basically came out and said, you know what, we can't do this. We can't do all of this stuff that you wanted, and we need to be more integrated into the process. So on the next slide was the real true start of, okay, we have ITS and we have IT. How are we going to work together? My description over the years has been that the ITS community needs to be the ones that understand what do we need to do to manage our business. I need to put a camera at this location. I need that camera to be something that I can see at my center, at the other centers around the state, to be shared with our partners in other departments across Pennsylvania, other areas outside of Pennsylvania. That's what the business side folks need to do, the ITS side of that component. Then from the IT side, as soon as something has to plug into that and wires start running and doing what wires do to make that happen, that's really where we need the IT community engaged to help us make those decisions. So it isn't folks with an ITS or some type of technical non-IT background making these decisions. It's IT people with actual IT knowledge doing what they do best. And we have laundry lists of examples of things that we've done where ITS made IT decisions over the years that were monumentally stupid. But at the time, we didn't know any better, and the people making the decisions didn't really have support from the IT community to do it. So we did what we thought was right at the time. So the Intelligent Transportation Program said, okay, we're getting together, we're going to work together, and every project is going to have representation from both IT and ITS on these teams. But this group was largely focused around what you see in the center there of the Program Execution Management Team, where the different business areas had representatives, the different IT areas had representatives. A lot of the decision making and discussion of what we thought made sense, what projects we needed to do, happened at that level. The project execution management teams below the program execution team, that was where every single project had a project manager from IT, had business representatives, had IT representatives, had district representatives, and each one of them would meet, set out a charter, a framework, of what are we doing, how are we going to do this project. We'd share it with the program execution team, and then once a month we had the program governance committee that was made up of the high-level leadership from all around PennDOT, from both the business and IT side of things. Well, we got so efficient at what we were doing that we were able to create new processes that were outside of IT and basically create our own IT protocols of how projects were going to be approved in this process, because the ITS relationship had gotten so good over the years. So this definitely set us down a path of, we all have a key stake in this. For us to be successful, we need to work together. So the next slide starts to show, all right, well, we wanted to create regional traffic management centers. We have 11 engineering districts in PennDOT, and there's no need for all 11 to run 24/7, 365. So we needed an ability to break up the state. So parts of the state may have daylight operations during weekdays, but off hours, overnight, holidays, we needed to reduce the amount of centers running 24/7. And you see the 4 regions that our state is broken into. Well, IT helped us take all of that mess that we had in each of the regions, get them up to good security-based protocols, get the video across the state in a way that we wouldn't crush the department's bandwidth, get it to where anybody anywhere across the state could look at anything anybody else had anywhere across the state, could control their equipment. So if we had a situation where the whole western region was down in a power outage or a building failure or you name it, we could disperse the activities around the state. And since this creation, we also have a statewide center that kind of helps oversee the whole operation and can move things around as need be. And this is made possible from the ITS-IT relationship with putting the right tools in place so that everything works well together. So continuing to expand on that, when we wanted to get into the arena of performance with INREX data and Waze information and the data that's available, we got into a whole new community of IT, the data scientists. When we started working with them, they were still trying to get their footing and explain to people why data science was an important aspect. So they loved us from the very beginning, and we've had such a strong relationship that we've built many, many different things without even having IT projects. It's almost like an extension of our staff now, the whole data scientist portion of the IT community. And we've been able to develop pretty elaborate programs that help our systems and performance area analyze a wide range of things to paint the picture of how well are our traffic management centers doing? What does it look like? What are the efforts that we're putting in place doing to change the way business is actually happening? What tools do we need to build to help them do their jobs better? So it's one thing to identify where the challenges are, but now can we use that information to actually build tools to make things better for folks? And with some of this collaboration, we've gotten to the point where we now have a congestion pie chart for Pennsylvania that we can break into pretty granular levels to understand what's going on around Pennsylvania. And I mean, you can see the picture on the slide here. It's just a high-level depiction of some of the granularity of things that we can move around, and we keep building and going deeper and deeper and deeper, and this is only possible because of our relationship with IT. So looking at some of the things that we've been successful with because of this, we've created wireless communication solution using cell communications. This helped us basically rectify a project in the northern part of Pennsylvania that was the level of bad can't even be explained. IT came in, we had to basically start over from scratch, and they helped us build a project in the whole northeast portion of our state. We had major ATMS networking issues that they helped us resolve before systems crashed. Basically, the redundancy so the TMC stay viable all the time. Build a video sharing. Again, I mentioned that earlier, so that our cameras across the state can be shared and all centers can see them at any point in time. We created processes for remote communication. We don't own traffic signals in Pennsylvania, so we had to work on ways to get traffic signals into our system in a way that would be secure for our network. Prior to that, every district that was wanting to do anything with traffic signals would have an isolated computer for that specific type of signal system, and they might have 3 or 4 different computers, each one for each type of traffic signal setup that they were trying to operate. We've been working with IT to develop fiber optic standards. We have a policy going through review right now that'll set up the protocols of what this needs to look like, what we're going to put in on projects moving forward, all the technology aspects of it. We know that we need access to the information, but this level of granularity of what the fiber optic standards needs to look like, that is a pure IT component. The business side of ITS is a large player in the puzzle, but there's a lot of things that fiber are going to be used for that are outside the ITS TSMO community. We just need to work closely with IT versus trying to build our own statewide fiber optic network. And then it all came together when we had the corona. We had centers that would do some cooping and go out and hey, your center's down, another center's going to take you over. But the thought of going remote was never really something that we had planned for. And because of the relationships we built with IT over the years, they basically put an all hands on deck and got us all the equipment that we needed to, in one day, basically turn all of our centers to 24/7 remote operations, rebuilding the way our phone systems worked so that calls would bounce properly between staff working at the same time. It was just amazing to watch this happen, and only possible again because of the relationship of the two. So moving on to look at the TSMO maturity, our goal, we talked in the beginning there where the ITS strategic plan focused on systems and technology. Now we're looking at all 6 dimensions with our goal really moving to a level of 3, and this is something that, again, hand in hand with us in IT. So just closing out here, lots of things in the works. Trying to build the TSMO program to where we really need to be. We have a framework and a program plan, painting the pictures of what we're trying to do, where we need to go. We're building performance reports and guidebook series. So the whole program of TSMO has just gotten such a dramatic jump start from us and IT together to where we no longer see it as two competing entities. We no longer try to do things behind IT's back. We know what our role is, they know what their role is, and we have to work together to be successful. That's all I have. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Doug. I wanted to open up for any questions. There aren't any in the question pod right now. In the interim, I'm gonna throw something out to the whole group. We've heard you each talk about the importance of coordinating and collaborating with your IT partners or your operations partners. But just real quickly, what has been the biggest challenge that you've had to face, especially recently, in these coordination efforts, and how have you gotten past that, or how are you trying to get past that? And anyone who wants to answer can answer.
Doug from PennDOT, I don't really think we've had any. Again, I think the relationships we built over the years have made it easy that when we started going to remote operations, we knew who we were working with. And I talked about getting the remote operations in place. I haven't really seen any negatives that came out of us being in the situation we're in today.
Okay. Great. Anyone else?
This is Bob. I think a similar response. I think, kind of to Doug's point at the end of his presentation, I think this has accelerated some of our initiatives. So I think in our current setting, we're as efficient, if not more so, but some of the things on our mind, this has definitely accelerated that for us.
Brad, was that?
Yeah, this Brad. So I guess maybe something that comes up from time to time is really communicating these issues and challenges that we have day to day, working together and making sure we're integrating back and forth, and then communicating that up to leadership, so that they can understand. We're dealing with a lot of technical issues, and sometimes, you have to get into the weeds to explain things. So that sometimes that's a challenge, communicating that up to leadership all the way to the top.
Good point. Any other questions out there from anyone? Well, I want to thank our presenters. If we were doing this in person, I'd ask everyone to give them a round of applause. So just do a virtual round of applause. I thought they did really well, and we didn't even have any fights between the TSMO and IT people. So I think that's pretty good. Although you never know with Joe and Brad. So in any case, thank you all very much. I appreciate your attention, and I would like to encourage you to sign up for the next webinar as well. It'll have a little bit different kind of focus. We will be talking a little bit more about the document, but we will have I think 5 presenters again, who will talk a little bit more specifically about specific effective actions that they have taken. So again, thank you all very much, and I think with that we can adjourn. Thanks.